Welcome back, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about costume semiotics. Semiotics in a much broader term means the study of a visual language. So a set of signs and symbols that inform the reader and the viewer what the subject of the matter means. So in the term of costume semiotics, what that basically means is that a costume is able to be read. You can look at a costume and know exactly what the status of somebody is, what their motivations, what their position within the narrative is, all through looking at a set of sort of subliminal messages. My own area of research lies within semiotics as a research structure. I look at what the textures, colors, symbolism within a costume means about a particular character. So within my own research, I've been looking at Merlin, the wizard, and how he's presented on screen, and amongst lots of other things. My area in costume study sort of lies within occult semiotics and religious symbology. And within that world, you have an awful lot of rich subject matter that you can analyze. But semiotics is not just restricted to occult and religious symbology. It's a study that can really harness the breadth of what costume means. And there's lots of really good resources out there, which I'm going to get to you in the end of the video. A question that you might be asking is, why is something like that important? And it's to do with our understanding, not just on an academic level, but anybody watching anything, whether it's a film, whether it's a stage show, whether it's somebody doing street performance out in the street, whether it's you're going to an exhibition, or even if you're out and about yourself and you're seeing other people in the street. The study and the concept behind semiotics is always there, because in a film, what semiotics does is it tells the viewer what you are experiencing. It allows you to understand, like I said, the person's motivations, their status within that narrative. But also, if you're out on the streets, it all ties into this idea of subcultures. As a society, we do enjoy putting ourselves within boxes and other people within boxes. And subcultures throughout the last century came around to sort of help people identify themselves and put themselves within a place within wider society. So when you see somebody dressed in gothic attire or in emo attire when you're outside, you instantly get those symbols and that set of instructions through your eye that says what this person is. That is all semiotics. It's the study of understanding through a visual means what something else is. But if we keep this conversation within the terms of understanding performance costume, so film, television, theatre, that sort of thing, it's all to do with character's motivation. A designer chooses particular colors, shades, textures, silhouettes, anything that they would consider to be chosen by the person that they're designing for. So when you're a designer, you sit down, you study the script, you consider what the character is trying to say to the audience, and then you dissect that into all these different factors that then come together again and present a character not just through how the actor performs, but through the way the costume is presented. And that is the sort of lens that the audience sees that person through. And that sort of back and forth between the character on stage or on screen and the audience member, that transition, that mode of transport between that person and the audience is semiotics. So we're talking about a much broader language. It's not just an interesting shape or an interesting texture. That says something about that character. And we use this term semiotics to understand what all of those different parts and all those different textures and all those different aspects mean to somebody that's receiving it on the other end. So although the term semiotic sounds kind of a bit arty-farty and highbrow, it's just a term that researchers use to sort of quantify that data that they're receiving and understand what those motivations are. And as a researcher myself, it's my means of understanding what I'm seeing in front of me. That's how I research. I look at all of these different factors, and that's how I understand what the meaning behind something was. So I can then try and work out how that fits within the overall structure of what I'm trying to understand in a broader sense. So semiotics is my tool as a researcher to understand what I'm trying to question in that moment. So with that being said, and thinking about costume semiotics in a broader term of art history, we can look at something like The Girl with a Pearl Earring. That's an incredibly famous painting, and the reason for it is its simplicity and the message it's trying to portray. Think about the pearl earring itself. Now, the pearl is a symbol historically of purity, especially that sort of white pearlescence color, and the fact that it's present within the painting and it's the subject of the painting, the name of the painting, we are instantly informed that we are looking at somebody that is pure in nature. But one of the most charismatic parts of the painting that art historians have all sort of historically decided is the key focus behind the painting and the key motivation for us to love it so much and want to view it is the way that she draws you, the viewer, into the picture with her. And that is done by just a simple pose of looking over her shoulder. You feel like you have interrupted a moment with her. You feel like you've stumbled into the room and she was quietly reflecting or just being still in that moment. And the way that she's looking over her shoulder, and you see the way the fabric sort of shifts as she looks over her shoulder, you spy that one earring, the rest of her body, the way that the fabric is draped over her shoulders, obviously looking the other direction. So you know that she is looking over her shoulder to you, and she is inviting you in that moment to be with her. An example I've always used of it being really dominant in a costume is the Queen of the Night from The Magic Flute. It was performed by the Royal Opera House, and you can look at clips of it online and you can see what I mean about the way that the costume is so intriguing. When you see the Queen of the Night come onto stage, she sort of appears through the darkness. Her costume is constructed in a way that it makes it look like she is emerging herself from her shoulders into the light, and the rest of her costume is a sort of cacophony of textures and really deep blues and really deep purples and pieces of velvet and strips of organza and tiny little sparkles of gems and beads that make her look like she is emerging through the night sky. And as she performs throughout the stage, your focal point is solely on her. Even when she's talking and singing, in this case, to the other people around her, you and your eyes are glued on her because the way that the costume is using the space and creating those different layers and framing her in a way that your eye is drawn particularly to her. And the textures that they use make you understand that she is a creature of the night. She is emerging through the darkness, which then complements the way that the performer is creating the character on stage. She's sort of skulking and moving and strutting through the stage in a way that is slightly villainous, and she's really angry in this moment. and you can see how the costume helps frame that. If she was wearing a bright pink garment, for example, she might be potentially seen as slightly acidic, but she wouldn't have that depth of somebody that's been crawling through the night to get to that moment and express her anger to the audience and to the person that she's singing to. So, from that moment of constructing that garment and putting it on that performer, getting it on stage, that all culminates in a costume that is really rich in a set of signs and language that as an audience we understand, okay, this person is a dark figure within this environment, and we are getting that through the textures and the colors of the costume, but also the way that it moves and the way that it's shaped around the performer. And then that is complemented by how the performer themselves is expressing and moving within the costume. A couple of books that I think would be good to look at to understand semiotics further from a art history standpoint, first of all, would be this one, which is Art History: A Critical Introduction to Its Methods. It's a good book that sort of classifies each of the different study factors in art history, and it gives you a really good introduction to what semiotics is and the study of art history as a broader research sense. Another one that I would really recommend is Costume Agency. This, I'm not sure how widely available it is, but if you can get a hold of a copy or at least look at the Costume Agency project, I would really, really recommend you do, because the whole project was conceived to think about how costumes perform. So it was a project that was designed to test what costumes say about a particular person in a particular moment. So I remember that they used Hedda Gabler, the production, the Henrik Ibsen production, as a bit of a case study, and they put the main character Hedda in different costumes and performed the same scene in each of them to see what the audience and what the people on set got from that experience each time. And each time that experience altered in some way. So it's a really interesting and fascinating way of looking at costumes. So I'd highly recommend Costume Agency. And the last book I would recommend is How to Dress. This is the perfect book to look at to understand the fundamentals of costume semiotics, because it basically breaks down a set of costumes and shows you what each element means. And that is essentially what costume semiotics is. It's a breakdown of a garment and how each element says something. And this book really encapsulates the breakdown of a costume in technical terms, but it really also pinpoints some key factors on why those elements are important. So it's a great starting point for understanding costume semiotics. And that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed this look at costume semiotics. It's something that I could wax lyrical about for years on end because it's my bread and butter. I love costume semiotics. I love the idea of being able to look at something and it tell you what you should be experiencing, and those visual factors that mean something in your brain and all sort of culminate in a character's motivation. That sort of back and forth between something visual and your brain trying to understand it is something that really motivates me as a researcher, and I just keep coming back to, and it's my whole ethos behind what I do. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Like I said, I could talk about it forever. And if you'd like to see more things on costume semiotics, please let me know. Before you go, I'd just like to remind you that I have a Patreon, and if you would like to sign up to that, you get a whole host of different rewards each month, including Mantle Magazine, which is a magazine where I break down films in costume and costume exhibitions. And this month I looked at the Met Gala. So if you sign up to the pattern tier, you get that each month along with an historical pattern. And the other tier also gets you access to my historical costume podcast each month and a whole host of different exclusives. So if you'd like to support the channel on there, please do. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.